Hey guys, Crunk here, just making another unscripted video where I just kind of talk about something that's on my mind. I was thinking I might build a character while I do so. Uh, so, what's been on my mind today is just, I like to play this game a lot. Like, I've played through this game. I haven't actually beaten this game, but I've started this game more than like 10 times, right? And a lot of times I like to play different builds when I play this game because part of the big draw of this game for me is that I'm a big Dungeons and Dragons fan, and I really like to make builds for Dungeons and Dragons. And the problem with that is I don't get a lot of chance to actually try them out. And another thing I like is I like to watch YouTube videos about different builds. You know what I mean? Um, And I just have some gripes about the various builds that I see for this game. It comes from this video does not come from a place of wanting to overly, just whine and stuff and call people out for their habits or whatever. It just comes from a place of frustration of trying out, many different builds that people have made and sometimes being very impressed and sometimes dying in honor mode because I like to play on honor mode sometimes, and I'll just try out a build. Right now, I'm making a build on honor mode. Yeah, and so here are my, let's just say 4 or 5 different notes that I have for people who make builds online and things
Where
that
to
I actually
next?
disagree with.
What was that?
Um, okay, well, the first thing is that I think that people will often make builds that have not really been tested very well. You know what I mean? Um, it's like, yes, in concept it works, but if you actually play it out in the game, uh, then it it doesn't really work out. You know what I mean? And one of the examples I have for that is there's a lot of builds out there that rely on oceans of hill giant strength to be functional, right? And those do not work out very well, right? If you actually try playing with them, um, they, it's a pain in the ass, right? Gold is not super easy to come by in this game. It may feel like it to some people, but if you're trying to spend money on magic items, the best magic items, everywhere you go, you could very easily run out of gold if you're trying to spend it, right? And one of my complaints is that there's just a lot of uh, gold heavy builds that people don't account for the amount of gold that people are going to have to actually spend. One build that I tried from online was one that's been talked about many times, and that is uh, the level 1 dip of cleric of wizard, and the rest in cleric. Now that it was interesting, but I did die in honor mode trying to get through with that build, and I will say that it was the most gold hungry build I've ever played for very little benefit for the gold I was getting. Um, I was basically having to spend all of my gold on um, scrolls and then spend that money copying it into my spell book. It was a lot of gold. Okay. Another thing I don't like is when builds online require you to get the hag hair for part of the build, like as a requirement for the build. Okay, and when you actually think about how it works in the game, it doesn't really make sense to require that. My reason for that is because if you're playing on honor mode, right? Um, honor mode, like, there's no safe scumming. So there's no guarantee that you can even get the hag hair if you want it, or if you're going for it, right? Because honor mode is hard, first of all. You could die. If you die, you're just dead, right? To get the hag hair, you have to get the hag within critical health and be right next to her so she'll beg you, right? It's possible to pull it off, but it may be that the dice just don't allow it, right? So if you played the whole game with a build that has 17, um, just so that you could get the hag hair, that's a waste. It's kind of a waste. It really is. Um, I really just want like a light pink skin, but I can't find one. But okay, so another problem I have is that people seem to overvalue decks in this game. I don't think they're necessarily wrong for saying that initiative is a good thing, but I see lately every build puts Dex ahead of everything else, right? Dex is not the only skill in the game. Dex is not the only attribute in the game that's good. I understand that initiative is a D4, so every point of Dex is super impactful to initiative, right? But there's other goals that are good for builds to have, right? And other stats do different things, right? So being bad at initiative is not the worst thing in the world. You can be just fine at the game and not be super good at initiative, right? And make up for it with other skills, right? And not everything in the game that you need to do is combat, right? Surviving in combat is obviously the most important thing, but if you're surviving in combat but you're failing every skill check, what's the point of the game? You know what I mean? You're failing everyone around you while surviving, like, right? I mean, I want to actually have like the greatest amount of success possible. And sometimes that means taking high charisma or high wisdom so I can get perception, you know what I mean? I don't think that necessarily every character needs to dump every stat that they can just to get as high of dexterity as possible. Okay. And okay, I have more. There's one more that bothers me. I think that a lot of builds will bake into the build that you should get respecs here, there, and a lot of times, right? Now, I don't mind putting a couple of respecs in here and there, but my problem with that is that, first of all, you don't even get respecs right away. Respecs cost 100 gold, which is actually kind of expensive in the early game. And if you're respecking over and over and over, it, first of all, not everybody wants to play like that. You know what I mean? It kind of doesn't feel good to respec that often. It doesn't feel like you're your character. You know what I mean? Like, oh, my character grew better at this. It more feels like, oh, my character used Wither's power to change class or something like that. You know what I mean? I'm not a big fan of the respec unless it's absolutely necessary to even something out. And I think it should be used, but I think it should be used more sparingly. Like, I don't think you should. I mean, like, if you're gonna respec, that's fine, but like putting it in the build, like making it so that everybody who does your build has to respec, a lot of times I just have to like go the other way with the build because too many respecs, you know? Ooh, okay. Um, I'm trying to think if there's any other ones. Oh yeah, I have one more, okay? People, the way people use Tavern Brawler is a little unnecessary, right? We already talked about this a little bit with the giant potions, but you don't necessarily need to have potions of Hill Giant strength to make Tavern Brawler good. Right? Yes, that'll make you super strong, but you can play a monk with Tavern Brawler that doesn't use potions of Hill Giant strength, and it will be just fine, right? There's ways to do it. I've theory crafted a build that can do it, right? You just need to get 12 or 14 strength, and your strength will be doubled with every hit. It's not a bad way to go. It really isn't. Um, yeah, I mean, just try it, right? You don't need to rely on the potions to get like 15 extra damage. You're still getting like +4 damage on every hit. Oh, and that's one more thing is that a lot of times I've heard this in the D&D community since forever. People will say like, "Oh, you only increase the damage by a D from a D8 to a D10." Well, that's only 1 point extra damage. And when I hear that, I kind of roll my eyes because we're playing D&D, right? This is not we're not playing Final Fantasy where you go up to like 100 points of damage per hit, right? 1 point of damage is actually substantial. And it's actually not 1 point of damage. It's 1.5 damage. Now that actually adds up if you're going up multiple times in dice, right? So a D4 up to a D8 is 3 points of damage extra, not 2. Right? Because each time you go up by 1.5. Okay, that is the end of my D&D style rant on builds and how I like to. Maybe one day I'll make a build video if I get some better editing abilities, editing software or something. But for now, you're just gonna have to live with my ranting about how it should be. This is my Dark Urge um, Paladin new maybe. So let me know if you want to see more of that. All right, bye.